Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Before we begin, I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine a smoky nightclub in the 1940s. The lights are dim, the glasses are clinking, and somewhere in the background a voice begins to sing, smooth, effortless, warm like late-night whiskey. A voice that feels like it belongs to someone who knows life, love, heartbreak, and laughter all at once. That voice would later become one of the most recognizable voices in entertainment history, the voice of Dean Martin. But here's the strange part: that famous voice almost never existed. Yes, you heard that right. The man who would become one of the most beloved singers in American music didn't discover his voice in a music school, a church choir, or a professional studio. His discovery happened in a way so unusual that even today it sounds like something out of a movie. So today, let's travel back in time and uncover the strange, surprising, and almost unbelievable way Dean Martin discovered the voice that would make him a legend. And as we go along, I want you to think about this. How many talents in the world are hidden simply because someone hasn't stumbled into the moment that reveals them? Dean Martin was born Dino Paul Crocetti in Steubenville, Ohio, in 1917. Steubenville was a hard-working steel town full of immigrants, factory workers, and families trying to survive the early 20th century. Dino's parents were Italian immigrants, and Italian was actually the first language he spoke growing up. Think about that for a second. The future voice of classic American lounge music didn't even speak English fluently as a child. As a kid, Dino wasn't known for music, not at all. In fact, if you had asked people back then what he might become, they probably would have guessed something completely different. Maybe a boxer, maybe a laborer, maybe someone working the steel mills like so many other men in town. And believe it or not, boxing was actually one of the first paths he tried. Young Dino fought under the name Kid Crochet. The fights were rough, gritty, and far from glamorous. He wasn't a champion boxer, but he was tough. Tough enough to keep stepping into the ring again and again. Now here's where things get interesting. During those years, singing wasn't something Dino took seriously. He sang casually sometimes, like many Italian-American young men did, at family gatherings, bars, and neighborhood parties, but nobody was treating it like a career, including him. In fact, there's a story often told by people who knew him back then. Dino didn't even realize how unique his voice was. To him, singing was just something people did for fun after a few drinks. Does that surprise you? Because today, when we hear his voice, it sounds so natural, so polished, so unmistakable. But back then, it was just Dino singing in the corner of a bar. Eventually, boxing faded out of his life, and he took on various jobs. He worked in a steel mill for a short time. He dealt blackjack in illegal casinos. He hustled through the rough-and-tumble nightlife of small-town America during the Great Depression. And it was during those nights, those smoky, loud, unpredictable nights, that something strange started happening. People began to notice his voice, not because he was trying to be a singer, but because he wasn't. Imagine this scene for a moment: a crowded bar, people drinking, laughing, arguing. Someone asks Dino to sing something. Maybe an old Italian love song, maybe a popular tune of the day. He sings casually, leaning against the bar, and suddenly the room gets quiet. People stop talking. That's when he first started realizing something unusual was happening. His voice had an effect on people. Now here's the strange part of the story. Instead of training his voice the traditional way, studying technique, taking lessons, practicing scales for hours, Dean Martin developed his voice almost by accident. He learned to sing while relaxing. Yes, relaxing. While many singers pushed their voices to sound powerful, Dino discovered that when he leaned back, loosened up, and sang as if he were just talking to a friend, something magical happened. His voice became smooth, warm, effortless. That relaxed delivery would later become his signature style. But at the time, it wasn't a strategy. It was just who he was. Eventually, Dino began singing more regularly in local clubs. He changed his name to Dean Martin, a name suggested to sound more American and more fitting for the entertainment world of the time. And little by little, audiences began to notice. His voice didn't sound forced, it didn't sound dramatic. It sounded easy, almost like he wasn't trying. That effortless quality would become one of the defining characteristics of Dean Martin's music. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that some singers sound like they're working very hard, while others sound like the music is just flowing out of them? Dean Martin belonged firmly in the second category, but the discovery of his voice wasn't the only strange twist in his journey. Soon he would meet a man who would change his life forever: Jerry Lewis. When Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis first teamed up in the mid-1940s, the partnership looked unusual from the start. Lewis was wild, loud, unpredictable, and physically comedic. Martin, on the other hand, was calm, cool, and relaxed. At first, audiences didn't quite know what to make of them. But then something clicked. Lewis would run around the stage causing chaos, and Martin would step up to the microphone and sing like nothing unusual had happened. The contrast was electric. Their act became one of the most popular comedy acts in America. Crowds loved it. And suddenly Dean Martin's voice, the voice he had discovered almost by accident in small-town bars, was being heard by audiences across the country. Nightclubs filled up. Radio shows invited them. Eventually Hollywood came calling. But even as his fame grew, Martin never abandoned the relaxed style that had first revealed his voice. In fact, he leaned into it even more. By the time he recorded songs like That's Amore, his style was unmistakable. Smooth phrasing, gentle humor, and a warmth that made listeners feel like he was singing directly to them. When you listen to his music today, it feels timeless. Not because it's flashy, but because it feels real. And that authenticity goes back to the strange way he discovered his voice in the first place. Not through pressure or training, but through comfort and natural expression. There's another fascinating detail about Dean Martin that many people don't realize. He often seemed almost casual about performing. Sometimes people even thought he looked bored on stage, but that was part of the magic. His relaxed posture, half smile, and laid-back delivery made it seem like singing beautifully required no effort at all. Of course, the truth was that years of performing had refined his instincts, but the foundation of his voice, the warmth, the ease, the conversational tone, came from those early nights singing informally in bars and clubs. It's one of the reasons his music still resonates today. Because it doesn't feel manufactured, it feels human. And when Dean Martin eventually became part of the legendary group known as the Rat Pack, alongside icons like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr., his voice became even more iconic. In Las Vegas showrooms packed with celebrities and fans, Martin would walk on stage with a drink in hand, crack a joke, and begin to sing. And the room would fall silent. That same magic from the small-town bars of Ohio had followed him all the way to the biggest stages in the world. Think about that journey for a moment. A boxer, a blackjack dealer, a small-town entertainer. And somehow, through a strange combination of chance, relaxation, and natural talent, he discovered one of the most recognizable voices in music history. It's a reminder that sometimes talent reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. Not in classrooms, not in competitions, but in quiet, ordinary moments when someone simply expresses themselves. And maybe that's part of why Dean Martin's voice feels so personal when we hear it. It wasn't built in a laboratory of technique. It was discovered naturally, almost accidentally, in the rhythm of everyday life. So the next time you hear a Dean Martin song playing late at night, think about the strange path that voice took to reach the world. From a young man named Dino Crocetti, singing casually in neighborhood bars, to one of the most beloved entertainers of the 20th century. Now I want to hear from you. Did you already know that Dean Martin discovered his voice in such an unusual way? Or does it change how you hear his music today? And here's another question for you. Do you think some of the greatest talents in the world are discovered by accident rather than training? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind legendary performers like Dean Martin, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Because sometimes the most fascinating stories in entertainment history are the ones that almost never happened. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.